the meeting to order. And, let's establish quorum, please.
Okay, take roll call. Commissioner Donahue? Commissioner Van Rees?
Here.
Vice Chair Mayan? Here. Chair Hecht?
Here.
Commissioner Texler?
Here.
I'll let the record show that Commissioner Whedon and Commissioner Liu are absent, but we have a quorum.
Great. The next item are public comments, items not on the agenda, and I believe Gary has a comment on.
Good evening, Gary Hedden, Los Altos resident, speaking on behalf of Greentown Los Altos. We have a summer internship program. Been doing this for 5-6 years. Really fun. You get some bright high school kids helping on projects. It's a 6-week program, 10 hours a week. And so we try to pick something that can be accomplished in 6 weeks and still be meaningful. It starts June 20th and ends July 10th. June 10th. Starts June 10th, ends July 19th. Didn't have my notes, sorry. I'm interviewing them this week. And Rasheen is going to actually help me with this program as well. She'll be a co-mentor. It'll be the program that I have in mind is to support the application for Tree City USA. And what I have in mind there, talking to Tanya and see how we can be helpful. But what I'm thinking is reach out to some of the 3,000 cities that are currently members and find out how it's working for them. What's been successful, what are the challenges, and how do they measure success? Anyway, that will be what I would have in mind. I'd like Tanya to meet with us early on in the program and make sure we're on the right track and what we do is useful. I'd also like to come back to the commission in July, get it right yet, July 10th at your meeting and have them give a 10-minute presentation on what they've learned on their summer vacation. So I'm interviewing this week. They're really bright kids. I've had 3 interviews. It's gonna be hard to say no to somebody. There are 2 more to go. We'll see where it goes. Thank you.
One comment. As of now, we don't have a July meeting. So...
It's on the calendar. It's on the website.
Oh, okay. I'll look into that. But
well, that'll be a problem. Okay.
Are they high school kids?
Yeah. They're juniors. Have them back later.
Yeah, they're local high school kids. Mm-hmm. So August is probably
would still work.
I would think so.
Very well. Okay. Good point. Yeah, one right now it's Los Altos High School, St. Francis, and Pinewood. Good distribution. Yeah, thanks for that.
Thanks, Gary.
Any reason why we don't have a July meeting yet?
That's one of the off months. So December and July are.
Oh, I thought it was August. Sorry.
Yeah.
So August there is a meeting, but not July.
August there's a meeting. There's no July or December meeting. Okay. Next item. Any comments on the agenda? I mean, sorry, on the minutes from last. Yeah.
Make a motion to approve the minutes of the April meeting.
Commissioners approve. Raise your hand. Okay, great. Before we jump into the next agenda item, I do just want to introduce Angela. She is a fellow here on the Waisili program from Thailand, and this is a program being run by the city manager's office. But her and I have been collaborating since she's been here because her focus is sustainability, solid waste. Just wanted her to come and see this meeting, and she's going to give a quick intro about herself.
Nice to meet you, everyone. My name is Angela. You can call me Angela. I'm from the YCD program, which is Young Southeast Asian Leadership Initiative Fellowship Program. And my background is in the plastic recycle. And I'm very interested in how the city have been doing on the sustainability and the environment issues. So hopefully I learn anything from Angela. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Have you?
Question or comment? So if we wanted to meet with you and hear about what, you know, we think if, for example, the solid waste committee, you know, elected, get your input on something, is there a way to set up meeting with Angela? I don't know what the question goes to.
Can you clarify what you're want?
Well, if it's a general, one is just a general meeting to understand, you know, to help to understand what she's working on and see how we could be able to do it in the program. And the second thing, if we needed specific, you know, hey, we're working on the solid waste committee. It'd be great to have your input since that's the focus of your program. Would it be okay to invite Angela to a meeting, and how would it work?
I think she would have to talk to Anthony. Anthony Carnesecca is overseeing her, but there is no solid waste subcommittee.
Plastic subcommittee.
Plastic.
Might be useful for her to
Yeah.
be a part of.
Oh, the single-use plastics.
Single-use
Yeah.
plastics.
So she, yes, she has. Sorry, I mean.
Yeah, my bad.
She came to us.
No worries. I'm
Thank
like,
you. I'm like, what is?
did I miss something?
Sorry. Yes, she did join our meeting last week. So
Great.
yes, that was a great suggestion. She has been she will continue to go to those meetings. Yes.
Okay, excellent.
So her program is through ICMA, which is the International City Managers Association. So this is kind of one of their principal kind of training programs that they do kind of continuously and everything. So this is something that Gabe is very active in ICMA. So it was something that got brought to his attention and then kind of coordinated from there.
How long is she, Angela, how long are you going to be with us? 1 month. Oh, okay, so it's very short. Yeah. So you start, when did you start? Okay, so we won't see you again at the next meeting, I guess. Okay, that was quick. All right.
Good to see you.
Yeah. Great, thank you for coming.
Okay, next item are the discussion items. First up is the EV fair, I believe. Staff has a presentation.
So yeah, I'm just going to give a little background to start on why we do the EV fair. So the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, the CAP, it was adopted in 22, and one of the goals, specifically 1.4A of the CAP, was to increase education and awareness of available EV resources and incentive programs. So city staff and the EV planning committee planned the EV fair, which we call Destination Electric, for 2 years, 2023 and 2024. The EV fairs have been successful in providing education and awareness opportunities about EVs to our city. And a few ways in which we provide these opportunities in the EV fairs is that we include numerous different EV models that are showcased. Any of the attendees are able to talk to EV owners about their experience owning electric vehicles. And then we also have booths that provide information on incentive programs and electrification. So as I mentioned a little earlier, the EV fairs have had great outcomes and success despite weather being a little unpredictable. As we know, this year we had tons of rain, so shout out, thankful to everybody who volunteered and still showed up regardless of rain or shine that day. But we did have over 18 electric vehicles that came out and were showcased, and they were brought in by local volunteers. We had over 12 informational booths that were not only giving information on electric vehicles, but also chargers, building electrification, local policy, and incentive programs. In addition, this year we added a fun aspect of showcasing emerging methods of transportation, which e-bikes. We had 3 e-bikes and a test ride area that we safely built in our parking for the community center. So with that, we also want to thank, all the efforts from the volunteers from Greentown Los Altos, as well as Los Altos High School Green Team for coming out and helping us. They were a big help this year. So moving on, although these events were pretty successful, they did take a ton of effort to plan. City staff began meeting with the EV Fair Planning Committee about a year before the 2024 EV Fair happened. And some of the things that they focused on initially, just to let everyone know, is like coordinating times just to meet about planning, coordinating with graphic designers for promotional materials, assuring the space and time for the event would be available, coordinating with volunteers, outreaching with vendors, ensuring the safety of the event and the participants, promoting the event throughout the city. So it takes a lot of components to really plan these events, and a really big effort, not only staff, but the planning committee. So there was a clear challenge with the limited time and effort that we could reserve as staff for coordination and planning, and taking this into consideration and the efforts for coordination and planning for the last 2 years, city staff is recommending that we do pause planning a EV fair for the year of 2025. And instead that we conduct outreach at the Los Altos Farmers Market to meet our cap goal of 1.4A. The Los Altos Farmers Market does happen every Thursday from May to October, and it's 4 to 8 p.m. And this means that we can do outreach for various items that are beneficial to the sustainability department and the environmental commission. Some of our outreach ideas that we have are, sorry. Benefits of the farmers market outreach is that we have coordination and planning for the event is minimal for staff and for volunteers due to the farmers market already being an established event that happens repeatedly. We do believe we would be reaching a different variety of audiences that we would be reaching compared to those that attend EV fairs, which they are already aware and are looking for knowledge of EV, right? Electrification and things like that. So at the farmers market, we would be reaching other audiences that might not be aware. They might just be attending the farmers market and walking around and be greeted with all this information. Another thing is that staff has already actually secured 10 days of farmers market for this year. We have a booth with the city, and that will create multiple outreach opportunities, just those 10 days in general versus 1 day of EV fair and outreach and planning. And then a big one is that, the attendees of the farmers market will get a face-to-face interaction with community member, policymakers, and experts in EV or whatever we are going to be doing outreach for in that day. Oh, and then we can also do community surveys, not official surveys, but ask questions to the community regarding what their needs are or how they want to learn or what other outreach we can implement or look to implement in the future. And then we did pitch a couple of outreach ideas that we think that would be easy to do at a farmer's market. So we already have EV flyers that we have made for the past EV fairs, and we can kind of model and update the EV flyers that we have. We can park an EV in nearby stalls, because obviously we can't park a EV in the farmer's market itself. But there are a lot of parking nearby that we can park an EV and help people walk to it and explain to them, you know, any information that they would want to know. We can also invite experts on various topics to come out. In this case, electrification, could be like car chargers or incentives that are currently out for electric vehicles. And then again, conducting informal surveys and asking questions to the community members that are in attendance. So, any questions?
Yeah, so any clarifying questions from the commission?
Yeah, so you mentioned 10 days secured from the city for this commission?
For this, yes, for this commission. Yes.
First is the sustainability division and the commission, yeah.
Did you say for the sustainability or for the whole?
No,
Yeah,
just for
sustainability.
sustainability.
So you reserve 10 days.
One booth, one booth.
Mm-hmm.
And did you have a plan for those 10 days at all before you reserved it? I mean, or was it just in?
Never use plastics outreach for
For
guards outreach, yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Date secured?
I will have to double check on that.
Yeah, but we're hoping to get at minimum at least 2 days for the EVs for electric vehicles so that we can continue to make as great as an impact as we would for the EV fair at the farmers market. So we would at least minimum dedicate 2 of those days to EVs.
So I have a question about how many man hours are we talking about when you say it's a lot of work for staff? Or woman hours?
You want to take a stab at that, Carl? For like the planning committee and staff,
I'm just asking about staff because I think
Well, on top of what we spent in the planning commission and planning committee, which I don't know, I joined kind of late on that, but
so yeah, it's the coordination of the meetings, the coordination of general notes, and making sure it's general project management of it's a big project, so making sure that everyone's on the same page and like everything's organized and filed, and that helping reach out to vendors, it's communicating with vendors after reaching out to them, it's communicating internally with staff, getting all the various stakeholders internally on board, filing the special permits, working with the staff that helps us set up, creating the plan, the outline, the map of the event, and then the slew of marketing materials needed for the event. So collaborating with the PIO and the graphic designer for all the marketing materials, passing out the marketing materials, putting them up on the downtown windows, ordering snacks. I think there's a lot. I can keep going on.
I mean, it's hard to put a number on it because it was a lot of days and it's not like a set time, you know, that we can track. But it was, even when I was helping for the short amount of time that I was helping, like I could easily do something for the fair every single day and it would take like an hour or 2. And a lot more time the closer we got because of more things that we needed to.
Yes. So yeah.
Does it potentially take less time the more experience we get? So now we have the maps, or I mean, we have a lot of this stuff, right? Or do we?
the flyers, we just have to change the date.
Are we still doing clarifying?
It's still clarifying questions, yeah. Yes, I guess that would be one question.
I don't think significant.
Do you think there's efficiencies moving forward?
I mean, in some stuff, yes, but for example, coordinating with local vendors to come out or even the booths. It wouldn't be, I mean, we have these people's contacts, but it's still like reaching out, having the communication, trying to track what day everybody is available. Like it's still, it takes one thing away, which is getting the contact number, but you still have to replan every single year in terms of.
Well, this year we're losing one of our core volunteer planning members, so
Yeah.
someone, and that would likely be staff, would take over for a big part of the fair, which is coordinating with all the EV owners. And then if this, I'm not sure if this is being passed on to CMR or not, we're not sure, but that would require a like learning curve as well.
So one question I have is there anything that you're doing that could be done by the other people on the planning committee, non-staff members? Because it sounds like, for example, like what was done contacting the EV owners, obviously doesn't have to be staff, right? There are some things probably that could be done by the planning committee, non-staff planning committee members. If they're short-staffed, we can figure out ways of maybe increasing it. So that's my question. Are there things that you're doing that you think could be done by someone else?
There could be, but we would still be facilitating. I would assume we'd still be facilitating the meetings and coordinating with the staff on site, and the other planning committee members are also doing a lot as well already.
Yeah.
So it would be up to them to see if they could take on even more, because we didn't mention all the things that they were doing.
And how many planning committee members do we have for that?
I'd say there's two principally, including myself, and then sometimes the third.
Civil Credit, right?
Civil being one of those two,
Yeah.
that core.
And who are we losing?
Yeah.
Okay. And is there a replacement for Civil? That's
I mean, we'd have to
not
look.
now.
We'd
Okay.
have to look. It's not easy to replace her.
Just
role.
asking question to clarify.
What organization is Sybil part of?
Continue with the, she is part of Los Altos High School team.
Green Team. Los Altos.
No, she's also,
E
Silicon Valley EV Association or something.
As well.
One of the two.
We'd have to find someone else to take over.
Yeah, right.
Probably can help on that. Right. The other question is, how many events do you manage your department every year? Like, is that the only one, or do you have 2, 3 other ones?
That is the only big
That's the only event that you do.
event. Now, yes.
Does the city do any other events?
In regards to electrification, I mean, there's various different events between different competing departments. So in regards to the things going on with Park and Rec, I mean, when we have like family days, things like that, like kind of like what I more so mentioned before about like kind of capitalizing and kind of blending together. That's why at the last meeting. So I guess I'm a little bit confused is that we thought with having spent the staff time to actually kind of strategize about how we could essentially get away from the EV, because at the last meeting, it was noted that the cap, it wasn't intended to actually explicitly say yearly EV fairs, and that it does, but that doesn't mean that we're bound to it. That's our living document. I wouldn't be supportive of adding now the farmers market and then still having staff. This is supposed to be an alternative in lieu to the EV fair. I also think, fundamentally, I mean, when you look at our per capita adoption rate of EVs, we're very much above like most other jurisdictions. I think we need to spend a little bit more time in being able to kind of market and do the outreach and kind of some of the fundamentals of the farmers market type of an atmosphere that's not just a dedicated destination. And this is something we can bring back and do alternative, rotating years.
Yeah, I was gonna say, should we move on to, any public comment? Any public comment on this? So yeah, let's move on to, I guess, discussing our feelings and thoughts about it. Just a couple quick comments, Nick. I think the last time we talked about the EV fair, I think the feeling was not that I think the setting was, I think we feel is good, and getting all the people in one place is good, but focusing on EVs, I think, was what we thought might not be the appropriate subject. So in other words, moving toward electrification and other things, building electrification, because you're right, EVs are very well adopted in this area and maybe not the right focus at this point.
It is still the largest source. Saying that Los Altos is not a leader. It's still important to keep, keep pushing if we are to get to our goal of 2035, carbon neutral by 2035.
Yeah, so I think there was, anyway, I kind of recall feeling it should be EV plus electrification, more focus on electrification. Yeah. EVs aren't, it's only the one.
When you're done making your point, I just want to note that Commissioner Texler has her hand up.
Yep. So that is my first point. So Laura.
So I think I might have been one of the voices that was supportive of doing outreach at the farmers market in lieu of the EV fair. So I at least had that view, and I do think that there are a lot of other events, larger events we can leverage to advertise to our community if they are specifically looking to do a ride and drive or something like that, and those people who are willing to go seek out the information. And then the farmers market would be a better way for us to reach a broader segment of the community. So I'm supportive of the staff proposal, but.
So, I think, yes, we have a pretty high adoption of EVs in Los Altos. I mean, there is a report from 2023 looking at 2023 adoption, and 50% of the new cars sold to Los Altos residents were EVs in 2023, so it's very high. It's probably the highest in the country, actually. But at the same time, we know that like the adoption of EVs is slowing down. And part of the reason is because we already got all the early adopters. And probably Los Altos has a high fraction of early adopters. I mean, these are people that have, number one, the money, two, the education, and the awareness of what's going on with climate change. And we know that from having done a lot of surveys around it, we know that a lot of Los Altos residents are very concerned about it. They're trying on their own to do something, and that's probably one of the easiest way of doing it if you have the means to do it. So what I'm concerned about is that if we start taking our foot off the gas pedal, which actually, or the iron pedal, I think I'm not sure it's the time to do it. I mean, there might be a time at some point in the future, I don't know when, but I'm not convinced it's the time to do it, because that's the only way people can talk to EV owners, see cars, but mostly talk to EV owners and have them share their experience, because I think a lot of the issues with EVs, obviously there is an issue in terms of cost because it's still pretty expensive, although the price is coming down. But I think there are issues about charging, there are issues about range, and only EV owners with experience with EVs can answer that question. I think it's going to be somewhat harder to replicate that at the farmers market, showing the EVs, having the owners there, and being able to address some of these questions. So that's one point. The second point, and I'm agreeing with Tom, I think what we wanted to do from the discussion last time was to expand the fair and not just make it an EV fair, but make it an electrification fair. So to include building electrification. You've already including other means of transportation, like having the e-bikes and all that stuff. So I think making it more of an totally inclusive type of electrification fair would probably be the way to go. But I'm not sure it's the time to just say, okay, we're doing great, let's move on. I think, you know, we need to keep at it one way or another. And I'm not 100% convinced that replacing it by the farmer's market is going to do it. I think the farmer's market having a booth there on a regular basis is a very good idea, because we can address specific topics when the time comes, right? So it can be, and then we can be very specific there. And as you said, we can reach a different audience. So my first take on this would be my first reaction. And then obviously I'm not in your shoes, so I don't know. It's hard for me to really get my hands around how much time you're spending on this. I'm just trying to figure out exactly how much time you can have other people do. But that aside, I'd say, you know, a combination of both, I think, would be perfect, and making the EV fair more an electrification fair would be my, you know, my recommendation. So I'm different from Laura from that standpoint for sure.
Can I just respond to some of the?
Yeah, of course.
So we did introduce more building electrification this year in the event.
Sorry about that.
We had a vendor come and they brought a water heater, electric water heater, and all that stuff. So I'm hearing contradictory things right now, and it'd be helpful, I think, for me and my understanding. So you mentioned earlier that it's going to get more efficient if we keep it the way it is. But if we're expanding, that is not going to happen. So that's off the table if that's what we're talking about. But also, we're already doing that with bringing in more electrification. And I mean, we could add more booths or something like that on the other side of the parking, but that would require more brainstorming and seeing what we can do. And then I think we're saying is that we truly feel that at the farmers market, we can come up with ideas that are going to be just as robust to get those people that would normally not go to the EV fair, because it does. We don't have the data to show whether it's the early adopters that are coming to just look at new models or whether it's, you know, people have never seen an EV before. And I think what we're proposing this year is to really understand what the need is, because we're putting on this event, we're spending this money, we're spending staff time and volunteer time, but we don't really understand what that need is. And then when we talk to people at the farmers market, we can say, okay, maybe we need to do a speaker series on electrification. Maybe an event is the way to go. I think we just need some confirmation that we're going the right direction with the limited resources we do have. And that's genuinely how I feel about it.
Yeah, and the recommendation is to pause it for the next year, and we can always reestablish it. It's not to end it completely and never do it EV fair again ever. It's just for the year to again get the information that we need from the community and maybe redirect or stay active.
So I'll go next and let Carl have the last word because it's closest to all the details of running it. I feel strongly that, you know, it's for the city to have one day where we run a sustainability. I would even broaden it from electrification to something that shows that, you know, we're proud of being a leader in CAP. You know, we have all these Beacon Awards, we did all this stuff, and we're leading the way. So I think it's a matter of pride, since we started something, to continue it and keep that momentum going, to have something that commemorates and celebrates and give people information. But maybe we can look at making it smaller, we can look at making it broader, but I'd like for us to keep that as a focus as one day out of the year to do that. The other thing from the farmers market, having been at the farmers market at a booth, trying to get surveys done for when we were doing the CAP, people are there very focused. They're there to get their vegetables. Oftentimes they're there to do whatever. They're not thinking about, oh, should I be changing my gas water heater to an electric one? It was very hard to get mind share of people with the two, you know, running after people and having some high school students helping as well. What I'm saying is that it's not necessarily a slam dunk. You put a booth there and people will come flocking to the booth. It will be a lot of effort. And of course we lose the focus of it being, you know, there being other things. I like the idea of having a booth where we can, you know, pass information, periodically have a special thing if there is something on, you know, plastic, you know, single-use plastic, we have options, things like that, that we educate the public. I think that's a good idea, and definitely leverage all the wonderful volunteers we have for that. But just one day out of the year to keep something going, to keep the momentum and show that the work that we're doing in sustainability of the city, I think is important. Every time I've gone to the EV fair, whatever the electrification fair, I've learned something new. And whether it be a different kind of EV or it be a different kind of induction, you know, oven, or, you know, how these things look. So having that information in one place, a lot of us, everyone of course has seen an EV. Most of us have seen Tesla. We don't know, oh, you could have, you know, a cheaper vehicle, you could have different, you know, so and then yes, definitely making it a way where, you know, we can tell people not just about e-scooters and e-bikes, but also, these are the bus routes. And if we're adding things as we go along, sorry, I'm getting on a soapbox, but I just feel again strongly that as a city, we should, you know, spend that little effort to make one day special and focused on this. And we could tie it up with the farmers market, but then again, make it a bigger thing where we have a parking area reserved, where we have more action. We could tie it up with one of the first Fridays. We could do something different on how we could partner with Lava. We could partner with other people, other organizations, definitely the high schools, and leverage more volunteers so that we can take some pressure off of staff time. And definitely all of us, we could jump in and support it more if needed, as needed, but continuing to do something rather than, you know, feel like we're healing back and doing less. It just feels like a loss of momentum.
The only thing that I want to just say is that to talk about like public outreach during COVID, I probably would have ran the other direction at a farmer's market if people were approaching me during the COVID time when you guys were doing CAP outreach. I mean, was it not? I mean, we adopted it in 22. So, I mean, that's just the counter argument that I could see that happening. And I think, honestly, we'll have to go back to the drawing board and kind of talk internally, because I think to staff, it actually looked more of like an expansion of, to say 10 days, 2 hours. I mean, that's 20 hours. So, I mean, we're multiplying by 5 times the amount of time that we're actually out in the community, and also actually going out to the people. And if we're talking about expanding the EV fair, to be able to talk about things like induction or even, you know, electric type of equipment for, you know, so that we can also help to nip in the bud further, you know, gas powered lawn equipment. You know, there's the CAP is not just about EVs. I mean, I've been glancing at it, the entire thing. So it's kind of, I think, a little bit, I mean, it's going to be your guys' prerogative, but I can't fundamentally support that staff will do both, though, moving forward. And I will disclose that, at least right now, we won't do both. We simply don't have the resources to do both. So that is kind of like a policy level decision of the commission, is it's one or the other, but not both at this point.
Question on that. So the booth time, I think, depending which way we go, I think one of the values of the booth being there is for public outreach on things we know are coming down the pipe: dark skies, bird safety, plastics. And so I don't know if that needs staff time. That can be commission time or volunteer time, right? So just a quick comment there. I don't know if we need any staff time other than reserving. What you've done is reserve the booth, and then if we want to use it to further the dark sky, that's up to me, Xiaopeng, to demand, I think. I guess that's one, I mean, if we're making those hard decisions, it's either 10 days at farmer's market or 1 day in the parking lot for whatever we decide. I think we can work around that. The other thing I would say is, I'm happy to sit down with both of you and work through what your work plan is for the event and see what can be offloaded to us or other volunteers. I don't have any feeling for what that is. You guys didn't give us a sense for how much time it takes. I know it takes a lot of time, but and I don't know if you're trying to cut back on that 50%, 60%, 30%. So having those kind of hard figures would really help. I think all of us grasp what you're asking to cut back on and free up. So I know it takes a lot of time. I just don't know what that means.
It's not only about like the actual hours, it's about someone being in charge and having the time to make sure that everything's going to go smoothly. Like when you're putting an event on, I know it seems small, but that's a big event, and you don't want to come to the event and it just like doesn't work well. And so if you can truly find someone that is going to be the glue and hold everything together, because that's really like what it's about in coordinating and making sure we're following all the county guidelines and city guidelines and safety guidelines and stuff. I don't know if how that even works to give that to someone that's not part of the city, but to hold a city event. So that would require more discussion.
Yeah, which is where I was suggesting maybe we work with some other organizations like Lava or things that do events across the Bay, or similar otherwise, and then figure out how they get it done. I mean, we do our bubbly stroll and our beer stroll and other things that are very targeted special days for things.
That they have dedicated people who are managing.
Exactly,
It's not about event planning or understanding how to get event planning done. It's about event planning is a big thing, and there are event coordinators or event planners. That is their dedicated role. So it's not it's just that is it's a real position that people need to learn, and there's a learning curve. It's not that easy just to put together a big event.
And for example, what you're talking about is, like, a lot of people don't even know this, but it's Pacific Coast Farmers Market Association. It's an actual individual entity that they're the ones that coordinate all of the farmers markets predominantly in the immediate Bay Area. So like vendor wise, like that's why it ends up being like Lava. It's almost like a lighter reach or a lift for them rather, because they're just kind of, okay, they're going to procure our streets, make sure things are closed off, do the markups. And it's kind of like, they're just accounting for the space versus the, unfortunately, with at least vendors, they know, oh, there's going to be, a return on like their efforts to come to the farmers market because they're selling something. This is, a lot of, volunteering and kind of, showing cars or, whether or not it's, even like Los Altos Hardware, coordinating, just saying, all right, they're just going to send staff time for free, to kind of show off some of the inventory. So it's kind of one of those harder ones to kind of, when it's not the city paying for vendors really, rather than kind of just trying to coordinate the volunteers, so to speak, almost. It ends up being a little bit more challenging, where we can't really kind of guarantee that people are going to show up unless we literally keep on checking in regularly, which is, I know what Tanya was informing me is really kind of one of the biggest hurdles, is to really kind of make sure, like, okay, well, yeah, they said they were good to go 3 months ago, but are they really actually good to go? Do they have this? Do they have that? And it's a lot of information sharing back and forth that becomes quite cumbersome.
I hear you, absolutely. Events are a lot more work than it looks on the other side. And at the same time, figuring out, we have the bubbly stroll coming up and the beer stroll and other things. The Art and Wine Festival and the Arts Festival. We do different things within the city that get done every year.
I think those events have a lot of dedicated volunteers.
Exactly. The question I'm having is why, have we tried to figure out if we can get those dedicated volunteers to run such an event? If there's other groups to work with the green, you know, more, collaboration with the high schools, or with Greentown, or, whatever. I'm not saying that, we have all the answers, but just brainstorming that there may be ways of managing an
Are
event.
those events put together by volunteers?
I don't know. I don't know the details. I know that Lava helps with a lot of them. But they do happen. So we have to figure out, maybe we can do a little bit of research and figure out what's a more efficient way of running an event, even if it's a more efficient place. And maybe we do tie it with the farmers market, and that may be a good answer, but I think it'd be good to have something that really celebrates what we hope is our city taking a leading position in sustainability and the environment and climate in the area.
Well, any comments?
So now.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I'm generally supportive of the farmer market approach. Do I think there should be an Earth Day event in Los Altos? Sure. But I certainly think it would be great if it came from a volunteer-led source. You know, I helped with now I'm forgetting what the name used to be, but this year it was called the We Love Earth Festival in East Palo Alto. That's 100% volunteer run. And yeah, I don't think we should have one, but I do think, just from being on the inside, a few things that were roadblocks of, like, the fact that we don't know early adopters versus late adopters of the audience. That's something when you're a volunteer-led thing, you can just make an Eventbrite and you just survey people after the event, and there's no red tape about that. So I think there's a lot of freedom if we can get a volunteer-led movement for that. In terms of the farmers markets, I think it's a very exciting opportunity. I also think, yeah, it's a lot of work. I would think of it as 10 mini events. So yeah, I don't know how much less it would be. One thing, big consideration for me is in terms of the branding of that. I think whether you would want it to be presented as City of Los Altos, or if you want an actual tablecloth. I know I've been talking about this for a while, and in particular, this feels like an opportunity to talk to other commissions to see about their needs for something, and if there's something that could be made that's modular to help all the commissions do public outreach in one product. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts.
What was the name of the event in Palo Alto?
Sorry. It used to be called We Love Earth. Now it's called Love Our Earth Festival.
I think I mean, it's a hard call, right? So I think at the end of the day, you're going to spend as much time probably managing your 10 days at the farmers market if you want to do it well. You're going to have to reach out, get some vendors, get some experts, get whatever. If you want to have EVs, you're going to need to find parking space for the EVs. You need to find EV owners. So, at the end of the day, I can get the point. Yeah, we do one or the other, but I think, yeah, I mean, doing the farmers market is not going to save you time, I think. I mean, I might be completely wrong, but I'm guessing it's going to take a lot of planning for these 10 days. Less planning, but more days.
It will take away a huge part of the actual coordination of the event, like getting the actual location, making sure everyone's available at one time versus ensuring one EV to be there at one event at a farmer's market versus getting 18 EVs for one day. It dramatically decreases, I think, yes, we still have to input effort, but it's not the amount of effort that planning the event would take, just in quantities, but also the pre-stuff of location and things like that, and coordination of the actual event itself, and getting vendors and things like that.
I mean, it sounds to me, and I may be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, like there needs to be a discussion outside of that meeting between, I don't know, maybe it's Carl, maybe it's someone else, and you guys, and try to figure out whether there are things that can be done by someone else and not staff for that kind of event. And if it's yes, and identify these items, tasks, and see who else could be doing it. Try to identify volunteers or an association, an organization that could take that over. But I don't think, I mean, if that's what we want to continue to do, it sounds to me like we need to help you more. And we need to figure out ways of helping you more. I think because, you know, obviously we want you to work on other stuff too. So, so it sounds to me like, I don't think we can make a decision today. I mean, unless we want to.
Kind of my next question is, what were you hoping to, the end result of this section to be? Were you hoping for us to say, yes, let's do 10 days at the farmer's market? Or I guess what was the end game here today? What was the objective?
Well, the recommendation was to pause the EV fair for this year. Do the outreach at farmers market days, 10 days, or as many as we get for the EVs, and figure out what it is that would benefit not only, you know, reaching our CAP goals, but the community and what they need in order to electrify or be able to purchase a car or things like that.
And to add to that, yeah, it's up to the commission. Do you want us to continue to spend more time on looking at these other ideas, or do you want us to move forward with this idea and start getting into planning it? Or yeah, so it's up to the commission.
I think my sense, if everybody's holding the same opinion they expressed during their comments, is that I don't think we're ready to give up the EV fair. I think we all think that centralized, it's an effective approach to marketing to the community. That doesn't mean it's the right answer, because again, I think there's a lot of things we don't know about what you're trading your time off with and how much time that is. So what I would suggest is if we can go back, bring it back next meeting and just like have the hard thoughts about, yeah, here's what we could offload to volunteers. Here's some ideas of volunteer organizations that might pick it up. Tanya, I still think somebody from the city is going to have to manage the safety aspect and the permitting or whatever else. But I think in terms of coordinating vendors and stuff, that can be a volunteer organization. I think that really, I don't think needs to be staff. You need to have some oversight, and somebody needs to be reporting to you, this is what's going to happen, but I don't think you need to be on the phone every day making sure 18 EV owners show up on time. I don't think that's what you should be spending your time on personally. So that's my take is, let's come back next meeting and make a decision, but how we get to that decision, I don't know if we can't have an ad hoc subcommittee, I'm assuming, right? We're maxed out. But Carl could come up with a plan or put some thought into it if he has time. I don't know if he has time.
So I would want to talk to Suresh and some of the other people that helped and see what their thoughts are on a completely volunteer run, if it's possible. I mean, I personally don't think there's a great need for the city to be sponsoring such an Earth Day. So that's where I divide from the group. But yeah, so that's what I would want to look into.
Something we would talk about at the commission, or really come to the commission, if that's how if the way that you're explaining it,
yeah,
and I'm understanding it correctly, it would be something that the volunteer organizer would be in charge of, and they'd loop us in when they need us.
Yeah, I think the way that kind of what you're kind of asking for is that, we would provide the staff support to coordinate essentially a facility rental, and then we would, show up to talk about maybe some of the programs and stuff. I think if we're trying to continue to keep it, and then we'll say that we have this area of the parking lot, essentially area, we're providing, 10 pop-up shade tents, 20 tables, and it's up to you guys to do all the vendors. But guess what? If you're doing any e-bike riding, that's not going to happen because that's a city liability component. But if you guys want to have kind of a meet and greet, and that's it. So, I mean, I can just tell you the two things is that EV bike thing was actually a very big thing for us to do. The city attorney and me had multiple meetings on it because of just the liability component. And then ride and drives is not going to happen unless you guys can have someone assume full liability and indemnify the city, which is a $4 million split. So it's a lot of, it's like this is partly where I was like, it's a lot of the big, yeah.
So if you're saying, I mean, I think one option is you say, hey, if we will provide this oversight and that's it, or this is the basic stuff we'll provide, or we want to provide, when we have to make the final decision. If you guys want to do it, go find volunteers and come back to us and make it happen. I mean, I think that's a reasonable approach as well.
I think the key here is making sure that you don't spend too much time on this and figuring out how we can run it without you guys being involved so much. Because it seems to me like you were involved a lot in the, and just that, yeah, it just doesn't make sense. It can be run minimally by staff, I would say. I mean, there are things that you will still have to do, but it should be 10% maybe of what you're doing, right? So we need to find the right balance, and we need to find someone else to pick up the tasks, right?
Yeah, and I think if we can't find that volunteer organization, that support, then yeah, that's kind of the answer. Then we move to a different solution.
I second Tom's suggestion of coming back in a month after having brainstormed options, and maybe if we're moving forward, with the farmers market plan, what that really looks like, so that then, maybe we have more information to say what we support or not.
I was going to say the farmers market starts pretty soon.
Which is, it's already started.
Yeah,
it's
3
October. It's October, yeah.
Do we intend, what the 10 dates are?
I'll have to.
No, she has to check it. She said
The first one is not next week, I'm feeling.
No.
So.
But it is this year.
We have basically until October to yeah. It's
If the dates are not set in, we can choose them, or this. Yeah.
I need to double check. Yes.
Okay, but
I think it's
once we have that information. So I think the only thing is, I mean, given we can't form a subcommittee and.
No, but I think it has to be one person, and I don't know.
I think wasn't the guidelines that, 2 people could get together and work on something in semi-informally? Was that not the guidelines that we got from the city attorney on non-subcommittee kind of work? I'm just wondering how we could help
on that last time. So,
He's reading a legal brief or something right now.
You're not looking at forming an ad hoc subcommittee, you just want to delegate a couple of people to brainstorm and bring back an idea next week?
Next month. Next month.
Next month. I mean, yeah, that would not violate the Brown Act. Would you agree with that? I mean, it's just, as long as there's not a quorum of members who are meeting to talk about it, I think it's fine. In fact, you could go, are there 7 commissioners, or there's 7 seats, right?
Yeah.
So you could go, there's 5 commissioners here tonight, it could be 3 and 2. I mean, you can have 2 different groups who are Brown Act buddies, so to speak, talk about it and come back and share ideas next week. That's legal.
I think it does go to Carl's point. I think there's some non-commissioned people, right, that were heavily involved that you really should probably talk to. before, I think we're kind of putting a lot of eggs in commission's basket where we had people that weren't even commissioned, I guess. I didn't know that, so that's good to obviously get your perspective.
It would be useful for staff to look into what is the minimal work they would be doing, that they would have to be doing anyway, no matter what, right? Like the permitting, and some of the legal stuff, I don't know, some. And Carl, trying to see with the current planning committee and the people that have been involved, what is the next step, who can basically pick up the workload that Tanya and that they have, both of them actually. And then we can discuss that in next meeting if it's not too early.
And I think I can offer to help too. So if you need assistance from me, let me know, and I'm happy to be part of those conversations.
Both conversations, or which conversation we're talking about? Because there's the booth at the farmers market, and then there's the idea of a.
We're looking at the fair right now.
The fair and what the volunteers might be willing to do.
Okay.
And then as the mayor said, we can have actually 2 different groups looking at 2 different things, or 3 groups looking at 3 different things, and just come up with ideas.
Yeah.
A couple of us want to look at more things we could do with the farmers market idea. Laura, you want to jump in on that one, and see if we can make that a viable option. Something.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. So there's a lot of moving parts here. Actually, yeah, there are. If this is our main outreach for the year, we kind of need a plan for those 10 days, which we don't have obviously yet, but that would be good to have. What are those 10 days? How are we going to use them? That's one item. The other is what's the basic level of support you'll provide or you want to provide?
Depends on if we're doing, it depends where the location, if they're gonna keep the same location.
I would assume the same location.
Just no reason to move it, there's plenty of space there.
Well, actually, the committee didn't want to do it there.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah, there's always been conversation about trying to do other spots because.
So that'll be part of the discussion then that Carl will have with it come back with.
What different areas of the city?
I just think we've always thought, it'd be great if we were actually in downtown for the same reason that the farm market is good, is that you get more traffic naturally. So that's one of the conversations we had.
The city can advise on those things and then depending on what the decision is. It just depends what the.
Yeah, so I think as we close on this, that advice or what you're willing to provide, Carl, and where you want to provide it and what volunteers might support it. And then the third piece is what are we going to do with the 10 days if we move forward on that? So it's really three pieces of information that I think will help us make a policy. That make sense?
For me, I want to think about in the 10 days, what are the ways that we can get people's input, the community's input. So, that's something that I would be interested in brainstorming with anybody that would be interested in the next month.
So what the question, you guys want us to put together a full detailed plan of the farmers markets, even though we might not do that? Or
just rough, like 10 days, here's how we might use it. It doesn't have to be detailed.
So we can give some of those examples where we'd be passing out flyers, where we could have a car there. We would just need, we would need to, the next step on those ideas would be to start reaching out and see who can we get there? Who can we get to be, to bring their car or.
And then also next step would be actually deciding what dates would be what, and then from there coordinating.
I think the farmers market is going to be, I think we can't hope that we're going to be able to accomplish everything we want to do at the farmers market. From experience, I think it's hard to get people's attention. They have other things on their mind.
I want to be armed with some thoughts next month, our conversation to say, what are those ways that we can do that?
So I think it'd be good to just kind of we don't have to have detailed plan, but for 10 days or maybe 5 out of the 10 days, what we would hope to do, what the specific.
So do you want to take that part, Rashina, and I'll sit with Carl and talk to the volunteers and see if we can get support for the fair or. Anybody want to take?
More interested in seeing how we could keep the destination electric or the electrification fair. So, but I'm happy to whatever if people, I mean, I'm happy to.
I'm just trying to quickly assign tasks
Yeah.
so we can move on, that's all.
So maybe we can have people volunteer for different things.
I don't necessarily think we have to decide everything in June. We just have to decide what we do with the.
Except that the fair takes a year to plan.
You can.
The fair takes a while to plan.
And the farmer's market act. Yeah, you can't do two things if there's groups of people doing it.
I don't know. I think of that as being.
On your own,
That's what I guess that's what I can offer to do. I mean, I think of them as two separate tasks. Yeah.
It might be better to have groups, but I think if he does want to contribute to that, he'd have to do it separately. Yes, so.
Okay, I think we have a rough plan.
We can email you with if you wanted support on one thing or the other.
At the next meeting, and I'll put it on the agenda.
Good.
I like that Tanya's already practicing. You guys figure it out and just tell me.
Next item, 2023 building permit.
Data, yeah.
Data?
So, I'm gonna take that. Tanya, do you have the?
Yeah,
PowerPoint?
sorry, it's gonna take me a second.
So, while it's going, the commission last time we talked was talking about, if we could actually get, the snapshot of calendar year 23's, cumulative data on kind of our 5 main components, which Tanya will get up on the screen here in a second, from a PowerPoint perspective, which is kind of like the 5 main standalone permits that we have. There's obviously other components that kind of play into electrifying versus in getting away from gas powered kind of appliances, components of residential. I mean, because Los Altos is 90% land use is residential. I'll probably just more so refer to it as that, is, you know, any type of appliance or fixture that's really, you know, fundamentally, you know, electrifying right now. So in 23, the snapshot is for heat pumps, 156, heat pump water heaters. That's what that next one is 107. Solar, mentioned that last month was 460. Again, just keep in mind that's not necessarily brand new rooftop installations. That's also people expanding their existing arrays, because, you know, they usually end up finding out, you know, oh, we can actually now with lighter modules, you know, we can actually put more on the roof than the old school ones that you used to actually have to do weight counts and everything. EV, so this is for actual EV plugs for people that have dedicated EV infrastructure, and then battery. And as a part of this, though, these are the standalone permits. Correct, Tanya, when we compiled this?
These numbers are the standalone and REACH code of compliance.
Yes.
Ones.
Perfect. Yeah, so that's what these are, kind of cumulative numbers. Go to the next slide. So where we took that, though, is to also talk about, I know there was kind of the fundamental conversation that's been talking about, is what can we do to electrify in the city, what kind of policies or kind of dedication that we can actually do. So the commission, this wasn't something that came to the commission because we did it under our Nexus fee study for cost per service, or what a lot of people just refer to as the building permit. Nexus study is we actually already are providing somewhat of a subsidy. So the 2023 building permit cost was based on valuation. We did not have previously the 5 distinct standalone permits that we have now, which are now flat rate fees. So when you look at column number 2, that means that the permit fee was calculated based on whatever the valuation was. The valuation is, believe it or not, very subjective in regards to, you have some contractors that are coming in and saying what the true value is of the install. So that's why you see some people for a heat pump got charged $2,500 for, it could also be a bigger system, for example. But that is why you would also see a range in stuff that is a like for like, you know, essentially, if you look from your neighbor to your neighbor, why there might be a different permit cost associated. So because of that, the range, based on what the previous and historically what everyone's been paying on their own permit, we are providing a 6 to now 25% subsidy. For heat pumps, we're providing a 25 to 40% subsidy for heat pump water heaters. We're providing a 25% for solar. EV is at a 45%, and then for battery storage, we're at a 60 to 73% subsidy now. So we already are supporting fundamentally electrification, even just from the permitting side of things. The one thing that I will at least point out is that solar, the $400 amount that's because that's a state law. That's been in effect for several years. Is that they set a maximum threshold that can go up proportionally if you're every other 10 kilowatts. So go to the next slide, please.
Just quick questions. Subsidy, what is that?
So that means the city is essentially what is
eating some of the costs of.
Yeah, so we are eating, you know, on a heat pump water heater. It technically costs the city a minimum $200 to review and permit that permit. We are at minimum eating $50 every time we issue that permit. So we can go to the next slide. So this is actually data that when Casey was here, Casey and Tanya worked with the building official to actually look at our historic permit data. And also the building official directly reached out to multiple of our kind of like what we say our frequent flyers in the building permit arena of the Development Services Department. And so these are actual numbers that we have actually seen for in regards to what it actually costs to do the work. So there's the average equipment cost, which was specifically broken down for heat pumps and heat pump water heaters, but then the average install cost. For solar, EV, and battery, we always were getting a blended rate because it was kind of like, hey, we're gonna, your equipment and the install, this is what it's gonna end up being. So this slide is to really kind of depict as kind of the biggest cost is obviously the equipment and the install, not the actual permit. Next slide.
So can I ask a question? That's excluding rebates or discounts, right?
Correct. Yep, because we can't account for that since the city's not the one that are issuing them. So if you want to go to the next one. So on average, the total cost can also look at the cost ratio like we were talking about when you add together the equipment and the install. That's what column number 1 is. The permit cost, the actual cost of a permit to the ratio of how much it actually costs to do the installation is, we're looking at well below 5% for the majority of all of these. And for EV plugs, we're looking at 12%. That's for how much the install to ratio kind of cost is when you're looking at it from that lens. And then next slide. And then so when you actually then break that down is that if we were to use the new flat rate fee structure, which is adopted by the council and goes into full effect July 1. So moving forward for FY 24-25, if we use the same historic permit data for the quantity of permits issued and multiplied that out, we're looking at just under $300,000 in permit costs associated. And that's the subsidized costs that we would collect next year, potentially. Next slide. So with that being said, and we can kind of toggle back and forth, is the staff does not further recommend additional subsidies of permit fees. Rather, the staff recommends requesting the city council to allocate, and I'm calling these sustainability permits, that are collected in FY 24-25 for capital implementation in the following years. So FY 25-26. So essentially, we would be able to essentially earmark the money from the preceding year to then next year's budget, which I think we've kind of talked about this pretty robustly for the last 2 years. Is, you know, there's not pots of money that are specifically tied to the CAP implementation, and this creates the funding mechanism for a lot of the things that, you know, the commission, as well as obviously the community rate proxy, is going to want to look to do. But the reason why I'm bringing this up is I know that there's been previous conversations about, oh, can we further subsidize permitting costs and make that recommendation to the council. That was something that the council did direct staff to bring to you, which is why this is before you in this kind of format, is to kind of give the real rough breakdown of actual numbers of what we would be looking for. I fundamentally think we're going to be at, if we further subsidize beyond what we're doing, the council would very much have to make some tough choices about what else we're not going to then fund, because this is a $300,000 potential revenue stream that is not really a make or break it for these installs and installations, since they're so small in regards to overall cost. And as Bruno kind of mentioned, this is not taking into account any type of rebates that people will also further get from any of the specific vendors or kind of you know, entities that are out there right now, as well as we never know and we'll never be able to forecast what federal government is always wanting to come out with, that, you know, kind of keeps on evolving and changing. Same with the state. And so because we're all on different budget annual clocks, you know, it's never going to be a perfect matching it up. So that's why I wanted to bring this forward to you guys, is to start the conversation. Obviously, is that, you know, this is what we are currently and already now going to be adopted to do come July 1 under the permitting permit cost that's established already, and that if there was that kind of policy request to take to the council, it's just to further also explain that this is that also what I'd have to disclose is that we are already further subsidizing, and I don't think it's necessary given the amount of what the real cost burden is actually the install and permitting cost.
So can you clarify when you say the city council to allocate sustainability related permit fees? So what do you put in? Is that all the permit fees would go towards the sustainability fund, or is that something different? It's in other fees.
So the fees, though, if you want to go back one slide, please.
Yeah, 30,000.
Yeah, so from permit fees that are collected from these specific 5 permits, is that the policy recommendation that I would feel comfortable taking to the council would be to say that this is what the allocation is. The EC, as well as myself, is supportive of essentially earmarking the money that we collect in this upcoming calendar year to whatever we collect. We will then allocate as CAP implementation funding sources. So essentially, it's kind of like, you know, what we're talking about is the early adopters are helping to fund the people, you know, in the future for other, you know, sustainability related permits.
So all of a sudden, well, maybe not all of a sudden, but we'll have a bucket of about 285,000 to.
If the council were to support that, they might say, well, we're okay with 50% of that, because the other 50% does need to go back into the general fund, because at the end of the day, we do have to pay the staff that are you know, doing the actual inspections and doing the permit review.
Yeah, and where is that money coming from today, or is this all of a sudden a new bucket of money that goes to CAP implementation that didn't exist before? So I mean, do you see what I'm saying? What's funding that now? Or there's nothing?
So this in this year's annual budget, we have put in what we can support based on what our general fund has currently this year, which would be earmarking essentially $50,000 for electrification that would need to be adopted by the council in next year's this coming budget. So that's obviously, you know, essentially 20% of what this revenue stream would collect. But I can also say is this math has never been somewhat calculated and computed for the council to be able to actually really fundamentally take in.
So there is 50K for electrification in next year's budget starting in July.
If it's adopted, yes.
Question on the fees, if you go back one slide. So the fees that were there last year significantly, no, sorry, maybe, yeah. The last year, 2023 fees were significantly higher. So the city, by going down to this flat rate, is losing a significant amount of funding when we're doing the electric. But what about for the gas? If they're doing a gas-powered water heater or a you know, an HVAC, regular HVAC system, are those fees also a flat fee, or are they the original higher?
So it would be based off of valuation.
Those would be based off.
Yeah. So
did you increase those to try to make up the delta?
No, you can't do that. Yeah, that's a part of the Nexus study. So we essentially, a Nexus study computates what it actually costs for each individual city to do the work. That takes literally based into the people reviewing and doing the inspections, their actual hourly cost, and then multiplies it out by how much time is actually spent for each individual permit. So, and then it comes up with the maximum 100% essentially justifiable fee. And so the justifiable fee, I would have to pull that study and actually show you what we're allowed to do. When you do an undervaluation, it's a little bit different, that you're essentially putting the burden of the cost determination on the applicant. So that's why you get a variable permit cost, is when you don't have flat rate fees.
So the sustainability, I'm wondering, so that fees, the fees that are the higher fees, theoretically, that would be for, you know, all the permits that are, you know, gas powered, etc. Does it not make sense to put a sustainability fee on those permits, to say, hey, you're doing, you know, you're whatever, you know, you're continuing to add greenhouse gases, are my words, to the environment, and we need to add this small sustainability fee on top of what it is that will then go into. It seems like, you know, we're kind of where we have the biggest need, if we have a lot of people going for gas powered, we're not taking those funds to help other people. I like the idea of using the early adopter money if the city is willing to give all of that. But still, I'm just wondering if the other people, they're already paying a little bit more, maybe, unless.
Well, I mean,
could that a portion of that be, or I don't know, I'm not able to say it right. Could a fees be added to that? Just saying that this is for the city. It's a cost for the city to clean up, right? Eventually.
So
the CO2 that this
so I honestly, without fundamentally looking at it, I don't think actually the council has its independent police power authority to execute that type of a fee. That actually more so falls under like a taxation type of it, which that would take a vote of the people.
Okay, got it.
So cost for service and things that we can draw direct nexus to, you can do it by nexus study, and the council does have majority authority to execute those fees. When it's something that is assessment or tax related, then that's an act of the people. So a majority vote of the electorate.
Yeah.
Laura has a question.
Well, I was just going to offer or say, I get what Rashina's point is that it makes actually logically more sense to take the permit fees from gas permits, gas appliance permits, and put that into cap implementation. I don't know if it's a semantics thing. I mean, that's essentially what you're advocating here, is to take the permit fee and use that for cap implementation, but there's more logic to taking the gas permit fees and using that towards cap implementation, not assessing additional fees, but whatever those fees are for replacing gas appliances.
So, Nick, so you're saying that for the gas furnaces, gas water heaters specifically, and then potentially also gas cooktops. I'm assuming there is a permit fee for that as well, right? Right.
So that's the one thing it's going to be a little bit different. So like when someone, if they already have the gas, they're not changing the infrastructure, and so we don't do permits for just the appliance itself, other than the water heater. However, because water heaters are protected under the health and safety code, they're allowed to install those without a permit and get a retroactive one. However, it's the one thing that building, we can't enforce that much, because the contractors just go and get it off shelf and come back and replace it. Yeah. So the gas stuff, so like if someone already has a gas cooktop, I mean, you just turn off the valve, you uninstall it, you reinstall it, and it's, I mean, Home Depot does it.
That's fine. I mean, just,
yeah. So I think we would actually get less dollars. We can look at it to see if it's even worth discussing, but I think my understanding is that we would probably have such a low bucket of money that it wouldn't, for what's issued for permits for non-electric appliances, we're not doing, I mean, there's just no way to say, I mean, 400 or, close to 500 solar installs, and we only have 10,000 structures in the city. Do the math, that's 5%. I mean, that's a really high
carbon tax. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, yeah, so that was a different thing in the cap. What I'm saying is that every time we're approving a permit that is using gas, the sustainability department is having to work to bring our we really have a target of 2035 to be neutral. We're kind of perpetuating that, so we're going to have to work harder to get those numbers back, right? Every time we have a new permit that we need for an HVAC system, that's going to last another 15 years, so it's going to be harder for us to get that shut down by the time we're hoping to be neutral. So at the same time, I like the idea of rewarding. So again, if I can get 10 friends to get a heat pump, and that brings whatever heat pump water heater, that brings 1,500 into the kitty for, that feels like maybe we could gamify that somehow. But I like the idea of rewarding ourselves. I'm just wondering, especially with the solar, I think we were looking at numbers for the first 4 months of 2024, and they didn't look as high. So I'm wondering, some of those things could be the early adopters are done adopting, and then now it's a trickle effect, and maybe we won't get that funding. Are we expecting the high number of solar?
I think there was a rush last year because net metering changed, so it'll slow down this year.
So if we go down to our projected budget, that could come. Yeah, so I think the largest piece, the 138,000, may not be realistic, because we may not get those 460. But maybe we get more heat pumps, and maybe we get more. So I don't know.
But I think it's gonna fluctuate. I think
they're asking for input on the concept.
I think the concept is good. I think so for gas appliances, mostly gas water heaters and gas furnaces, and non-heat pump HVAC in general, even if it's an electric air conditioning and a gas furnace. The permits are based on the cost. Your recommendation is to have a fixed cost for electric appliances and a cost based on installation plus equipment for the other permits. Is that what I'm understanding? Or?
Yeah, that's already what's established. The council already has adopted that.
All right. So we're not changing the gas, the appliance, those stuff. So it's still the same calculation based on the, okay, so it's gonna be higher than those permit costs.
But there's fewer permits that are issued under that.
I feel we not looked
Yeah,
at
quite a few, but yeah.
quite a few for
In 2000.
gas, water heaters at least.
Yeah.
If you guys would like us to pull the data, I don't really, I like talking about the data about like what permits there are, because I mean, yeah, so I mean,
you know, it does, you can take it from one or the other, I guess, you know, I think as long as there is a fund available for sustainability efforts, that's fine. You know, the hope is over time, that number is gonna go up and the other one is gonna go down. So maybe it's better to pull out of this one in the long term, right? So either way, I mean, I think either way, it's hard to.
Right now.
What's that?
Yeah, I think what's chosen doesn't have to be set in stone, because you know you're wondering which bucket to pick
every year.
I don't know about every year, but I think that having funds set aside for sustainability is the goal.
And this is a pretty clean way to get a number as well. I think we'll take these permits and give it to sustainability. The only thing I might suggest is the messaging would be better if we said, yeah, this bucket's coming out of the gas, and but maybe that's too complex.
So maybe an internal.
Yeah. But then, you know, they've got to keep it in this range is my guess. So it gets a little funky. This is pretty clean.
Yeah, I'm wondering if we could get greedy, if we could get greedy and say this money plus some percentage of the gas money, because this money, well, yeah. And then the way to maybe say, you know, the city is already investing quite a bit, right? If you're, you know, in terms of reducing the fees. So that's, you know, the flip side would be it's an investment that the city's making in sustainability by reducing the fees for. So we could talk it up that way and make it a win-win.
so.
But I'd be greedy and say, can we add a percentage of the fees for the gas powered to the kitty, so that, you know, we're not so dependent on what happens with the solar panel installed this year.
I think the key to me is that there is a significant difference in permit fees between gas appliances and electrical heat pumps. That's really visible. It's not like $50 more, $100 more, but like if you want to install a gas water heater, it's not $150, but the fee maybe is $500 or whatever it is. But there is a significant difference between the two. That's number one. Number two is like, yes, allocating some of those funds, wherever they come from, for sustainability activities and efforts for the following year, I think is a great idea. And I don't know, it can be either way. It's hard to know because we don't know.
I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, that's. Yeah.
So that's, you know, making sure there is a big difference between the two, as much as we can make it a big difference based on the law. I would say go for it. And then the second one is, yeah, sure, let's allocate at least a percentage of the permit fees for sustainability efforts, whether it's just the electrical appliances or whether it's a combination of both. I think that's.
Yeah, so let me give a little bit of background just so that you guys understand where we're at. So when we did the Nexus study is because the city had been historically under collecting permit fees forever, realistically. So by adoption of the new cost for service permit fee schedule that is in existence, which already carries the burden of these reductions, the council then will make up a shortfall of $1.9 million that the city has been under collecting when you look at prior years permit data. So the city had been essentially subsidizing close to $2 million annually of every brand new single family home built or remodels, everything going on in the city because the fees were so out of line. So when you take the 1.9 or the the $286,000 that potentially would be collected and divide that out of the $1.9 million, which is now the new, essentially the revenue that we were losing out, you're already going to be asking the council to provide you 15% of the revenue that we were just counting on making back up, because that's what 286 is out of the $1.9 million. It's a pretty big ask for one specific function of the city, you know, when we have other very much competing priorities when it comes to the city finances. Again, the commission can ask for whatever they want. It's just understand that even under this existing model is a pretty strong request, even from staff's perspective, but that's because I can draw a direct nexus on what we're collecting here. You know, that's, you know, the city also already collects a construction tax fee that's been established since 1985. So there's other things that are components of why the fees are set the way that they are, because of the comprehensive makeup of what permitting ends up actually being.
Yeah.
So with the 1.9 million is the additional fees that the city's going to be collecting this year compared to previous years.
Yes.
And which, I mean, I'm sure there is a much higher number of full fees.
There is, but the 1.9 was already a shortfall for everything that the city pays for, that we, to keep the lights on essentially, and to pay the staff that actually are doing all of these reviews, we have been missing close to $2 million annually. So it would be essentially of what we were supposed to be making up just to be breaking even, we're now essentially taking 15% away to the break even.
Well, I mean, you were not collecting the 1.9, right? So it's like it's a surplus in some ways, right? And
no, that's the thing. There's no surplus, and I make the distinction.
It's not what I meant. What I meant is you didn't have the 1.9. There was a shortfall of $1.9 million before, which you're going to collect now, right? Okay, so you're collecting $1.9 billion that we were not collecting the previous years. We're taking 15% of the 1.9 that's being collected that wasn't collected before, right? So I think it seems reasonable to me.
So the city wasn't running on a deficit budget, was it?
No, it wasn't, but we were subsidizing building permits, which is extremely uncommon. That's the one thing that usually is not subsidized. That's usually almost at the maximum 100% threshold, other than specific permits like this, which is more policy decisions. You don't subsidize someone's 5,000 square foot brand new build construction with an ADU in the backyard and a 2,000 square foot swimming pool. That's you subsidize these, which is more of the policy driven stuff that actually helps to push the needle in one direction essentially. Or you do some cities, even that I've worked for, they heavily subsidize the planning permits. So like when you get design review permits and stuff, so that's not where, because some developers will be like, oh, I'm not going to do that because that's, when I worked for the county of Riverside, in order to get multifamily housing development, it was well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars to get it permitted, just because of the staff time that it would take and the amount of time. So that's usually where people see subsidies, not in the actual building permit for construction.
Okay, so I would support if we're the plan and request in addition a portion of the gas powered permits to also be allocated towards sustainability, because that feels like something, every time that happens, we allow that, we're going to have to pay for it later. So
that's a clarifying question. Is it set that the permit cost will go up each year for flat fee, or you just mean, how long is it set for that? How you have it on the slide? Like, do you have a interval for when you would check it again?
So the flat rate ones, so like, let's say this time next year, I'll introduce the permit fee schedule again. The council authorized everything to go up by CPI, which is usually pretty minimal to some degree, or like what we use for the city CPI. And so, but with these, it would just be a further subsidy. We would still earmark these 5 as flat rate ones. And those would not get adjusted under CPI.
Okay.
But everything else, the reason why I'm more so giving you that background is everything else will still get a CPI that's on the building permit side of things. That's not a flat rate fee. So it would go up for stuff like the valuation-based permits for like gas-powered appliance stuff.
Okay, so theoretically, in 20 years from now, you're hoping those values stay exactly the same?
So no, that's a good question. Is every at a maximum of every 5 years, we will redo our Nexus study. It'll be a lot quicker and a lot cheaper the next time we do it because we do not have a Nexus study on file up until a month ago for building permit fees.
Every 5 years, you're going to be looking at that again.
Yes. Okay. So we would reevaluate it. Obviously, if the state or the federal government comes out with something like they did with solar, I want to say that was probably like 15 years ago now, and set a flat rate at the 400, I mean, we would just have to adjust it. And I very well could see that happening in the near future because of the way that they're streamlining the review process for solar.
I mean, the only thing when I'm looking at the permits, I think they're great. I think the only one where you could have flexibility if you want it from a cost standpoint is the solar because it costs I mean, the cost is $25,000 whenever you install a solar array. I mean, obviously it's less than that because you get rebates, discounts and subsidies, but so that one you could put it at 400 if you wanted, right? So that would give you a little bit more money. I think the other one makes sense. I think the $300 for EV chargers seems a bit high to me. Because it doesn't cost you want to subsidize that even more potentially. So that increases adoption of EVs if you make that easier, cheaper. So I mean, the only thing I would say is that you may want to kind of tweak these two. Maybe the EV goes down to 200, the solar goes up to 400 if you want it. Because I think $400 for a permit fee for a solar array, frankly, is really marginal compared to the cost you spend. Money.
Point. The one reason why we didn't further subsidize or recommend a further subsidy for the EV charger is there's a lot of the brands that's a part of kind of like their internal rebate system is that, oh, we'll also pay for your at-home charging system. So for that, it's like, I guess I hate to say, like if the end user is actually getting it, you know, like if you want another, you know, charger at your house, or are we giving it to Tesla and Rivian? Because quite a few of them are, you know, offering that specific direct rebate as a part of the transaction of their sale. So it's kind of, do we keep on further subsidizing the big manufacturers or the actual end user? That's the kind of conflict. That's the only reason why we didn't recommend it.
Do you have a feeling for how these compare to Cupertino, Sunnyvale? Did you guys do a neighbor comparison?
So that is a part of the kind of like the Nexus study when you look at things, but it's not apples to apples when you do Nexus because technically, like for example, Mountain View, they pay higher for certain positions. So that's where it actually comes down to a per person, per position who's doing the actual review. That's why when I say it will be faster and cheaper is if I were to show you the working spreadsheet of how I had to say this senior inspector does this review.
I'm just talking about the permit costs, which we're subsidizing. So like what, I off the top of my head, I don't know what the solar permit is in Cupertino.
They would all be almost, I guarantee you, at 400, they're all doing the max threshold because it's already considered a leveled fee. But that's why we don't do the comparison of cities is because that it's not really a part of Nexus, unfortunately. That's why I explained that, is because that was a big question at council.
I think Bruno's point about solar fee could be higher.
Maybe 400. If you want to put it at 400, you can put it at 400. I don't think.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't see any reason.
That's not. I mean, you're not compared to anything else, right? There's no other alternative. Heat pump and heat pump water heaters. There's an alternative. What it is for gas, but for solar, it's just solar, and you're not gonna choose to do solar or not do solar based on $100 difference.
Yeah, it's like batteries. You know, batteries, solar. Batteries and solar, I think, is the choice right now. I mean, we want people to put solar and not batteries, but I think, you know, there is no alternative, right? It's either you do it or you don't do it. So
you're gonna do it, you're not gonna be.
What does the commission feel like would be more appropriate than for the EV charger for a cost?
I would take it down at least $100. Maybe put it at 150.
But if you're saying that it's already subsidized for most people, that doesn't.
It is because of the way that we're transitioning from a valuation-based, fee right now, which has been collected, a lot of them at $550. So it's 45% subsidy right now, but,
I mean, I'm gonna give you an example regarding, because you can buy the charger from Tesla, from Bosch, from different companies, have an electrician come in and install it, you know, the circuit and all that. So it's gonna cost you $1,500, right? And then your fee is gonna be $300. So it's not insignificant. If you install a NEMA plug, which does exactly the same thing, it's gonna cost you $600. And then if you charge $300 for a $600 install, plus, I mean, equipment is nothing, right? It's just a plug and some cables. So that's a little bit expensive. So that's the only thing where I'm saying you could increase the solar cost and then you could decrease the EV cost, the EV charger cost, the permit cost. That's, I think.
I kind of agree with that only because an EV circuit and yeah, the solar system is way more costly than an EV.
Well,
so as a percentage, it's pretty high. So jack up the solar, take down the EV, and I think it's a good thing.
If there is some flexibility, that's what I would recommend. And then in terms of making sure there is a huge difference between gas and heat pumps and electric in general. And then, you know, it's a great idea to take that money and finance sustainability efforts, that's for sure.
So for EV, it's not the cost of just the charger, it's the charger and the car. So if you're spending $50,000-$60,000 on a car and you're putting in an EV, then the 300 is not that big a deal. So I'd be okay with keeping that at 300. It's already discounted. Especially since I expect we'll see more of those and we'll see solars coming up next year. And if that's the pool that goes into sustainability budget, I would second keeping the solar at 400 and keeping the EV at 300. Just so that, you know, from my perspective, if I bought a car that cost me $50,000-$60,000 and I'm paying an extra $100 to get the EV charger, that's not going to affect my decision.
Okay. So I think vertically for solar, there's a majority.
More than that.
We'll say increase solar.
400, okay. And then, but for EV
charger, I don't think we have an agreement there. But it's
for EV though, I mean, I guess I haven't heard from Laura or Carl. Do either of you have a position on it going to 200 or staying at 300 to kind of split this?
I hear both sides, but yeah, I guess I'd side with you, Sheena, because yeah, I think they tend to be grouped together. I know, like in the case of my dad, he's waiting for the battery charger setup that he can do to get an EV. So there's a lot. I imagine there are quite a few people that bundle those together.
I don't know that I have a huge amount of opinion other than to say, you know, batteries are increasingly important, just from a meta standpoint in terms of what we need to encourage. But I don't have a strong opinion about tweaking the numbers.
I mean, the thing is, solar and batteries both are very expensive installs. And I agree, buying an EV is expensive. So it makes sense to have them higher than the rest. And I think we definitely need to subsidize heat pumps and heat pump water heaters. There's no doubt about that. Make it as low as possible is the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's less of a game changer for the higher ticket items.
So should I make a motion to support this, subject to increasing solar to 400?
And requesting a percentage of, with friendly amendment to request a percentage of the gas powered permit cost to be put into the sustainable.
Do we all agree with that?
I don't know about that. I think we should look into, like, you know, I think it makes sense to allocate a portion of the total permit cost to sustainability efforts. Where it comes from doesn't really matter. I think 15% of the total is probably reasonable. You could argue a little bit more, maybe 20%. I mean, if we could get 20%, it may make sense, right? but I don't have any strong feelings whether it should come from these permit costs or the gas permit costs, as long as the envelope, the total fund allowed for sustainability services, you know, allows us to do stuff, because frankly, up until now, we haven't had any budget to do anything anyway. So we kind of we're spinning our wheels sometimes, and we realize, oh, well, we don't have the money to do that, so we can't do it. So maybe next year. And so I think, yeah, great idea to do that. Great idea to have significant amount of money every year to allocate to sustainability efforts. I don't have a clear picture in mind in terms of how much it should be, around 250,000 to start, and maybe we can move up over time depending on the projects we have. I think that's the key, right?
We'll have discussion, is it part of the fees, right, or is that?
For the what, for which part, sorry?
The allocation to sustainability won't be discussed.
Well, so that's gonna be more so like essentially what I'm recommending, you know, on the last slide, it sounds like there's a majority support of that, and with the addition of maybe having the council maybe consider upping the solar back to 400, which is allowed under state law. And then they'll obviously have to make the ultimate decision if that's a policy recommendation that they're willing to accept, which will help to essentially support electrification and other things of the cap, with providing the actual financial kind of stream, which was not obviously, you know, something that was explicitly vetted out.
I would also actually, talking about the cap, since you're bringing it up, we talk about action, but we don't talk a lot about adaptation. Adaptation is going to cost us a lot of money. We don't realize it, but it's going to cost us money. We're going to need funds to be able to change the city so the city is ready for, you know, climate change, which is flooding, fires, smoke, you name it. Water stations, because it's so hot out there, you can't do it. And so I think it's really, we're going to need more money than we think in the coming years. And I think it's a great idea to allocate a significant portion of the permit fees to that kind of action.
Can I make the motion again to support?
Can I put my friendly amendment still?
We'll do them.
I would let staff decide.
Yeah, let staff decide. We request.
As long as the pool is significant.
The answer is no, that's fine. But we'd like to just.
So the motion, does anybody want to second it?
Yeah, I'll second the increase of the solar to 400 and getting at least 15% of the total pool minimum allocated to sustainability and cap actions and adaptation actions. Is that okay? Rashina is thinking about it.
No, I'm just trying to figure out the 15% minimum.
That was the motion.
The increased revenue from the fees.
$300,000 roughly out of 1.9 increased revenue. Between 250 and 300, whatever it is.
Okay.
Vote?
So yes, I'm just gonna be.
Last slide. Can you just go to the last slide, make sure I'm understanding. Yeah, so I wasn't clear on. I read it as originally being 100%, but you're saying
it's 100% of the electrification permit cost.
Yeah.
But it turns out to be about 15% of the total. So
you
can do it either way.
Yeah.
You can do it either way. It's just like,
So,
we're happy to have money.
yeah, so I'm concerned that the 200 and whatever number in the previous slide is elevated because of the higher number of solar permits from last year that we may not happen this year. So the actual money that we end up putting in this kitty may be less than 200. So if we're doing, say, we recommend
15%,
15%, good. Or we can just recommend a number that, you know, 300,000 is a good target to start with. If that's what you're asking, if you're asking if this is okay, then
I would, so to address your point, Rashina, I would say, instead of saying whatever we get there, we allocate to sustainability services, we could say we will allocate 15% of the 1.9 we collect, which gives you a specific budget number every year until you decide to change it. But right now,
Right, so that's a different motion. And
Yeah, so I mean, I think, don't get too fixated on this, because yes, we do understand that like permit numbers and rates of the permits issued can change obviously year to year. And hopefully, obviously, I think the commission wants as many permits issued as possible, because that means that we're electrifying. But with that being said, is that this is the first time the commission has really asked for like dedicated policy funding from the council. Even as a part of the cap, I mean, the cap identified how much it might potentially cost for stuff, but it didn't really link to the where we can actually take the money from. This starts providing dedicated policy direction from the council. If for some reason, though, we close the calendar year or the fiscal year, like this time next year, and we can see what our potential allocation is going to be, that can then be something that the commission, you know, asks for, essentially like a policy direction increase of allocation, because it's, all right, we're talking about 15%, but well, it kind of went down. So we actually really need more of a percentage in order to kind of still keep the $250,000 is essentially what we're talking about. So I think it's, I wouldn't get too fixated on it, because I think you don't really want it to be as linear as we're discussing. We might need to revisit this in a year. And the council might need to as well. I mean, God forbid we hit a major recession or something. I mean, we may have to look at things totally differently when it comes to funding. So, yeah.
And the commission can always request that money from the general fund go to sustainability.
yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm just thinking that.
I'm just adding to that, and that is in your purview too.
Is there a motion again to approve to say we support this recommendation?
Yes.
Right, with the addition that maybe raise the fees for solar and maybe request additional funds if there is a shortfall for whatever, you know, wherever they may come from. I mean, if they can help them gas of fees. Yeah, is that a motion? Can you make it again, please?
Well, my motion was to support the recommendation, subject to increasing solar 400 and leaving it to staff discretion to ask for further additional fees if appropriate.
Right. We're gonna take a vote. So, Commissioner Texler?
Yes.
Commissioner Delvaux?
Yes.
Commissioner Van Rees?
Yes.
Vice Chair Humanian?
Yeah.
Chair?
Yes.
Motion passes. And
all right.
Thank you for coming up with this recommendation.
That's a good one. All right. Moving on to the next three items. These are the ad hoc committee reports. I guess I will start with Dark Skies. Not much update there other than what we presented at the last meeting. We have turned it over to staff and are waiting further direction from staff on the next steps. The other point I would add is that we have asked for consulting dollars on Dark Skies, waiting for an answer on that. I think it's pretty reasonable. And then the bird safety, we do have a consultant. I don't have a cost estimate, but I imagine it's
The birds, very expensive.
So that's Dark Sky update. Single-use plastics. Is there anybody here who can update us on single-use?
Yep. Tanya, Angela, and I met last week to talk about upcoming public info sessions, and we talked about format, we talked about content, and timing, and more to come on that. And Dawn was not able to make it, so hoping to loop them in soon.
Will that is that outreach in the next couple months, or in the next? Do we have dates for that, or is that you still haven't decided, or we haven't decided yet?
Yeah, we're still figuring that out. There was a timeline previously shared, but I think dates have adjusted, so it's can't set something in stone right now.
Yeah. Okay.
But hopefully, yes, by next month. We'll have the information section.
Yeah, I mean, I guess one of my questions on all these items are, we'll have our meeting next month and then we'll be on break for a month. I guess that's just a point. So let's get as much done in the next month as we can, realizing we're going to be out for 30 days.
Subcommittees will continue.
Subcommittees can still meet, but we won't be able to report to the larger commission and get input. Okay, building electrification.
Let's decide on a special meeting. If there is a need for a special meeting, you can always call for a special meeting, right?
Yeah. Building electrification.
I think the three subcommittee members are attending the meeting, so I don't know who wants to start the discussion.
You can go to.
I can go.
Yeah.
So we pretty much met, I don't know, several times, pretty much once a week at least, for at least an hour and a half, 2 hours. We've met with potential service companies that would help us with accelerating electrification. So, and we're still having discussions with them in terms of what they can provide and testing their services, actually. I'm testing one of them in terms of services, how it works, and how it would work for residents, make sure it flows well, it's easy to do and painless. We've talked about, so that's been a lot of the discussion that's been around that, because I think, in terms of accelerating building electrification, we're gonna need help to be able to make it easier for people to electrify their building and change their appliance. We haven't really talked about outreach other than part of what these companies would be doing would be some outreach with us as well. So it's gonna would be a joint effort in terms of marketing, promotion, and so on. So to make sure that people are well aware that there is a new service that's provided by a company that's potentially approved by the city, depending on how we structure it. We had a discussion very briefly early on about reach codes, and I don't know if that's something we should continue to discuss as a subcommittee. And then we've had also discussions around how can we educate the people in Los Altos to some more education and outreach without being very specific about that. So I don't know if Laura or Rashina want to add. So we're moving forward. We're hoping that we can bring something to the commission next month, some recommendations. I think I don't know if Laura and Rashina, we haven't discussed that very much, but should we as a subcommittee look at reach codes potentially as another option to accelerate electrification? And I don't know if there is any, the new building codes are going to come out next year from California, right? So, it's a question of whether we want to look into reach codes now in preparation for what's coming up, or whether we just want to wait.
I think what we talked about in the subcommittee meeting in the beginning was, our intent is to lay out, the 3 or 4 buckets of potential things EC could consider. And we're doing a deep dive on some of the partnering that we could do. But then before we go any further with anything, like Bruno said, we want to come back probably next month and say, hey, this is where we're at. So what we've looked into, what should we keep pursuing? And one of those avenues could be a reach code or other regulatory avenue, would be something that will, I think, include in the arena of options. But before we did any significant work, we'd want to get a discussion from the whole commission.
Yeah. Great. Sounds like good progress. Good. Look forward to next month. Okay, moving on to commissioner reports. Did anybody attend any meetings?
I attending the April 30th city council meeting.
Did I miss that one?
I'm sorry, do I, is that what we, do I just-
After this, yeah.
all right, so, I think the main, discussion item that's important to us, I think, at this meeting was the presentation from the VTA about their plan for the Homestead Safe Road to School corridor. So they're planning basically to change that whole corridor and add protected bicycle lanes and better pedestrian infrastructure, because there are some gaps in the infrastructure right now. So definitively some significant improvements, especially since it's a lot of kids go to the various schools and high schools there. There are sidewalks gap to be closed. They want to do protected bike lanes, at least on one side of the road. They want to upgrade the traffic signals as well, and the signals in general on the road, and the painting and so on. The cost of all this is about $16.8 million, money that they don't have right now. So they have $1.5 million out of the 16.8, from my understanding. And the construction is supposed to start around 2026, 2027, but it's obviously dependent on whether they can get the money to do it. So I think it's a good project. It's an important project. I think that with the council, there were a lot of questions asked by the council, a lot of changes asked by the council, because part of it was also getting feedback from the council on this. So there were a lot of discussions around that. They want to revisit the bus stops and so on. There's a lot that goes in there. So anyway, so it's ongoing. There will be some more outreach by the VTA. I think there might be some more resident outreach that's going to be done until June. The outreach is between now and June. So they're trying to get some feedback from local residents, people that use the corridor and so on. So I think just stay tuned if you see something in your area that whether there is a public meeting or some you probably want to attend, because I think it's an important project, and I think what their plan is pretty good from what they showed. So yeah, so there might be one coming up actually for the Grand Park neighborhood also. That's one of the things that were brought up at the meeting. I think that was I think the main topic. There was Bike Safety Month was recognized by the mayor also at that meeting. And also there were a lot of discussions about 425 First Street, but it's not as relevant to us. And then there were some discussions around expanding the definition of public arts. Again, that's not something that's necessarily too relevant to us.
Thank you, Jerome. The other one was Dawn, who is obviously not here. So I think that wraps it up for commissioner reports. Staff update?
That didn't come up on the agenda at this time, and I have 3 exciting staff updates that I want to share. And building on the theme of building electrification, one of them is that I've been working with the PIO on a building electrification educational campaign. So I don't know if anyone has noticed in the weekly manager news the appearances of information on rebate programs. I'll share one of them, which was in, I think, last week's City Manager Weekly News. So we met with SVCE, the PIO, myself, and SVCE met, and to discuss how we can build upon their marketing tools that they already have, and how we can start to educate more on rebates and the various programs that SVC has. So that's one front we've been working on. Another front is that I've also been working with the building division team on also promoting other SVC programs. So we had one of the I guess he's both planning. One of the staff members, his name's Enrique. He came up with this really great idea after attending one of our meetings. That because I was talking to them and seeing, you know, how can we promote some of these things to the contractors. So he came up with this email that he sent out to all the contractors about their what do they call it, the Future Fit program, and it's a way for contractors to get certified for electrification or learn about electrification, and they get money to do it. So we've had a couple people respond back, which is really exciting, and you can look more into the Future Fit program on SVC's website. Any questions on those?
No, they look good.
Cool. And then another exciting thing is we have a sustainability website up now. In the city on the city website. It's a work in progress. We have some of the main things, and so you'll notice that we've transferred over some of the pages that were on the Environmental Commission webpage to here, and we will continue to kind of reduce what's on the Environmental Commission webpage, because I've been told that the Environmental Commission is one of the only ones who have content on there, and so now that we have a sustainability webpage, the content should be on our city sustainability page. And
so eventually, sustainability will replace the Environmental Commission website.
No, there will always be an Environmental Commission page, but yeah, the content on there will not.
So the energy section there was on the Environmental Commission website. Now it's there. Can I make a couple of suggestions?
Sure.
Do you want to send it to her in an email?
No, I mean, I saw it already.
Okay.
Is there any way we can make it more accessible? Because right now it's a little bit buried in there, right? You have to go into, I think it's departments, I believe. I don't even remember how you access it. So, I mean, the key about this is like, it needs to be easily accessible again. And I think whatever you can do to make it easily accessible for people that go onto the losaltos.gov website, which is the City of Los Altos website, maybe on the landing page, maybe you have a link to the sustainability page that you have there. Maybe you may want also to add a sustainability link to the Environmental Commission page. So we don't need to have the content there, but at least there is a neat link so people can click on it and it takes them there. You know, trying to make it easier to access.
Those are not things in my purview, like making it. I don't have access to edit like the whole web page. That is our PIO. So if we want to put it, I think you're talking about like up on the front page or something. Yeah. That would have to be a further discussion with them, and I think.
See, like you could have.
Yeah.
So if you go up. Yeah, these buttons there, you could have a sustainability one. For example, I'm just giving you.
Yeah, I think that was, kind of the idea. So you're saying sustainability, the division page in general, to be on the front page.
Well, I like a link, so whatever it's a button or, you know, something that people can click on and it takes them to the page.
Yeah, and we were talking about doing that, and I think in an effort to get the page up faster, we kind of just went with this. So I think that could be an iteration, and I think there's going to be changes to the website in general, but I do think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's good. And you can, if you need to justify it with the PIO, it is a top 5 priority of the city, right? Sustainability. So
the only thing that I'll say, just as a disclaimer, I don't want to cut you off, Bruno. don't get married to the website, because that website is getting turned off in this next, like 12 months. Is we're dedicating, because it's not user friendly even for editing capabilities. That's why changes to the website, we're actually 4 versions behind what a normal website in today's setup is. So it will eventually change and actually become more user friendly. We're actually really limited with what that homepage can actually even look like because of the back end from it being 4 modules behind. So we actually, that's fully a part of this year's coming plan, is because it's one of the things that helps get out information. So
the only thing I'm saying is just make it easy to access right now is buried in there. I mean, I found it because I'm kind of, but you know, it's like, it's not obvious.
I think most cities have sustainability or environment
right
or
there,
something
right
like
there.
that. Yeah, that is accurate, yeah.
Even within departments, sustainability is under development services, but if it could have its own separate thing.
It's because it's a division.
It is, yeah, it makes sense, but doesn't sound like a development service. It just, another reason that it's very.
You Google Los Altos sustainability, it's a second hit. So I don't, I think it's findable. Can we have a link from the EC page to this?
Yeah.
Like I said,
No, I'm just.
yeah, that's a good suggestion, and that was the plan.
No, Tanya, great step. We're just trying to.
Because, you know,
Yeah, I love
hopefully we
that.
can have more stuff on that page and we add more services, right? So it's gonna be populated even more, and we want people to really have an easy access to that so they can reach the kind of service that they want. Pretty easy.
Good stuff, Tanya. Thank you.
And then I just wanted to say that there will be like another page right here that will go to the St. Louis Plastics website that will be live hopefully next week.
Sorry, which was the website?
The St. Louis Plastics ordinance, foodware ordinance.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, thank you, Tanya. Good stuff. Future agenda items. I think we have some already on there that we haven't run through.
So
PWS and VCE and so those updates are still on.
those are still
Potential future.
yes.
Anybody else have anything else?
Yeah, we should talk about farmers market next time.
Farmers market?
Yeah, and our whatever updates.
Oh, I think that's part of the EV fair. Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Good.
To me, those are 2 separate items. I would list them separately, but.
I think the different items, but I think it's,
Anything else?
Does anyone else want to add future agenda items at this time?
Once the budget is passed, it'd be good to get a sense of what the process is and what the budget is, what exactly it's earmarked for, and what the process is for.
well, right now, I understand we're 50K right now in the budget for next year, unless we request more from the general fund, right?
It'd be great to just get a little primer once everything is done on what we're hoping to get done through that fiscal year.
So highly unlikely that more will be dedicated unless the council were to make a policy decision to unfund other things. We have currently created a balanced budget already in draft form, and that's with the 50,000 and then other specific infrastructure to be made next year. So an increase, I think, is highly unlikely because of what is like an actual legal obligation for us to do next year. But yeah, we can give a debrief of what actually gets adopted once we're back, I guess, at the August meeting.
So the agenda item is an update on
Just a budget update or debrief, essentially.
And then I did have a clarification for Cal Water. What is, because there's a couple different people you can reach out to get a presentation. Do you want to learn about resiliency, like what people can do for the drought, or do you want to know what they are doing about the drought?
sometimes they have incentives also for people to change,
So the focus is for residents and what residents can do.
yeah, I think, it would be interesting because I haven't looked into that, but I mean, I don't know if they do anything to help residents, change their faucets and more efficient faucets or shower heads or watering system. Are there any incentives for gardens? Do they have so that people reduce the water usage in their garden? I mean, that would be useful to know, but.
Yeah, in the past, they've done presentations around their water efficient appliances and that they provide or do rebates for. So I don't know what their current, if they have a turf replacement, what their current reimbursements are. So in the past, that's the kind of information we've got. I think since we're not currently in a extreme drought situation, something about resiliency would also be an interesting update to get from them. But I think it's up to the commission whether that's a priority right now, or if we have other things on our plate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily a priority right now, but I think, if we're planning to have them come to the commission at some point, I think that's the kind of topics they should plan and share.
Yeah, and just so you understand though, I need to reach out and I need to have.
We need to give her specific direction if we want to have them come in and present. Yeah. So I mean, I think it'd be, 20-minute presentation for them, I think would be helpful.
I mean, I personally.
Agenda soon or.
I don't think in June for sure, and I don't know if you want something in the fall. I would say probably.
Yeah, I think August, September would be.
One that I think the MTWS.
I've already reached out to them anymore.
Because we need to better understand the recycling thing because sure, from last time when they came was 2 or 3 years ago. There's no recycling basically. They take the plastics and then they find the broker and the broker doesn't do anything with the plastics. So, that's an action item potentially for us down the road in terms of can we as a city do something about the plastics because our curbside provider is not doing it. So
my recollection is that they did, numbers 1 and 2 were recycled, everything else was.
Yeah. So it's like a marginal number of the plastic that they collect.
So to understand if that's changed or whatever.
Yeah. I reached out to them, so I will follow up.
Right, I think that's it. You can adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank
you.